one day I'm going to die. And that is the most freeing feeling ever because how much time do I have to make it count?
I've read your book, and it was quite fascinating to read loads of different types of loss in
Mhm.
people's lives.
Yeah.
For anyone listening, it's called Do You Believe?
In life after loss.
Yeah,
Thank you,
brilliant.
Cher. Yeah. You need laughter. You need love. You need to find joy in the most darkest moments. I remember just kind of getting the message from my sister. He'd been on oxygen for like the week and they just said it's not going his way. They're going to turn off the oxygen machine and kind of see what happens, I guess. She texts me about an hour later saying, Dad's gone. It was that quick.
Wow.
I don't think you can ever quite prepare for that kind of news.
There are moments in life that split everything into a before and an after. Losing someone, losing a relationship, or losing the sense of who you are. And sometimes you don't realize just how much you've lost until you finally stop running from it. My guest today is Andrew Flewitt. After he lost his dad in 2023, he began writing not only about his own grief, but the stories of others, eventually turning those conversations into his own book, Do You Believe in Life After Loss? But this conversation became about much more than death. We spoke about addiction, ADHD, chasing the next dopamine hit, identity, learning to slow down, and why sometimes the hardest thing isn't actually surviving what happened to us, it's giving ourselves permission to live afterwards. Andrew said something during this conversation that really stayed with me. He said, grief doesn't necessarily disappear, we just build our lives around it. And as someone still trying to understand grief in my own life, there were parts of this conversation that hit me harder than I expected. This is Andrew's story, and this is Dan Talks. I've gone from like up and down nonstop of like fully in one thing, fully not in another thing.
Mm,
And it's just been like a big yo-yo.
hmm.
So this last year for me has just been self-reflection of, okay, let's find your rhythm. Let's find
Mm,
your consistency,
yeah.
not based on what other people want or
Hmm.
think it should be your own
Yeah.
consistency.
Yeah.
It's been quite fun, actually, a
Nice.
little journey.
Well, getting to know yourself more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I got lost in life,
Mhm,
like me, not anything else. I just used vices to escape all the time.
mhm.
And then before I knew it, years had passed. And like, I'm now reflecting. I'm like, oh, okay, I don't really remember too much, which is quite sad because I'm
Mm,
like, how can I not remember
yeah.
my late teenage and early 20 years? But
Mm.
like, I don't.
When I moved to Brighton, I went out so much. I was drinking all the time. The first year here, I put on loads of weight. I was out 4 times a week at the pub, drinking, seeing drag queens, having the best time. This is so much fun. And life was kind of slightly going the other way for me, a bit like what you're talking about. So, what you sometimes do is then you do more of the same thing, not consciously, but it's like you're looking for that kind of dopamine hit or that thing to make everything kind of okay.
Mm,
So, you don't need to focus on it. And then you kind of think, well, everything's going to be fine. It'll all be okay. And then eventually you're kind of in a state where you're not really functioning like you maybe once have, and you're hungover more or you're putting on weight. And, that's one of those things that happens to everyone at different times, but you start to feel a bit unhealthier. I definitely did. And then before you know it, you're just like, how did I get from where I was a couple of years ago to this point? Like, I couldn't have imagined going out 4 or 5 times a week, drinking all the time, start smoking again, just all these kind of things that when I moved here, I had no idea would happen. So I think it happens to everyone
yeah.
at some point. And then you do look back and you go, oh, okay. And like now with, you know, now and knowing that I have ADHD, which, I'm 42 nearly, I've not really thought about ever having that, but it's something that I've read up on and, now I've had a proper diagnosis of. It's like I understand that my brain is going to chase the dopamine. It's like, and the way the person described it to me when I had my assessment was that imagine your brain is like a sink without a plug to, plug in the dopamine. Every time you have the high, it just drops straight out. So you're then chasing the next one. So that was a real wake up for me because I was like, oh, okay, the moments where I get something really great happen or I do something really well, the celebration of that kind of goes quite quickly because you get the hit and then it fades. You're like, right, so what's next? What am I doing next? And that's the same with like drinking for me. I'll have a gin and tonic, feel that buzz. When's the next one? Because I want to keep feeling the I'm chasing it. And then
Same.
eventually you're drinking 10 G&Ts on a Wednesday evening and wondering why you're struggling to get up for work the next
Yeah.
day. So that has opened my eyes up to a lot. I'm like, it's not my fault that I was doing that. I can't also go, oh, well, I'm ADHD, so I could just drink what I want. Um, but it's like I understand my brain's going to work in a certain way. So because I now know that, I can make a choice. It's like, right, if I have a gin, I'm probably going to want five.
Mm.
Or I could have a non-alcoholic beer, have a decent night's sleep, and feel a bit better in the morning. And it's
Mm.
like, what choice am I going to make? And that's kind of what I've discovered over recent months, I think, really.
I like that because
Mm.
that kind of gives it a label or gives it
Mm.
something that you can control,
Yeah.
right? Because I felt when I've been following that kind of similar pattern, it's the lack of control.
Mm.
I have a very addictive personality,
Me
and
too. Yep. Impulsive.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I got myself into a bit of a pickle with gambling addiction
Okay.
itself,
Okay.
and it's now only after the fact once I labeled it,
Mm.
uh, and then I could tackle it better.
Hmm.
And now I understand myself better. I
Yeah.
understand here's how I react when certain things happen. And you just describing that kind of the sink
Yeah. The
plug thing.
dopamine kind of, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I resonate so much with that.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
so much. When was kind of the moment that like you realized it?
There was a few times where I was like, okay, I'm going out too much. Like I was waking up probably, hungover in the morning, then trying to work. And this is going back a few years now in like a previous job and stuff. And probably before like in 2023 when my life did kind of go a bit kind of everywhere. So, losing a parent, relationship kind of breaking down and separating from my husband for a bit. Getting to that point, it was like all that stuff had been quite self destructive, I think. So I think it was just it just kept happening. So um, that was probably at one point where I thought, okay, life isn't what it was, or I probably am doing a bit too much of the fun stuff, and I think in a way, if I look back now as well, when I first moved here, it was just after COVID. I think I was in a point in my life where I was like looking for self discovery, looking to find out who I was as I was approaching 40. We live in a really kind of vibrant queer city where I grew up. That wasn't available to me. So I didn't have that kind of in my late teens and 20s. And I got into a relationship quite young and, did a really good job at blending, really, I would say. So I had quite a heteronormative life, you know, kind of relationship, house, get the job, get the promotion, buy another house, all those kind of things that you follow, the routes, because that's what's laid out in front of you, I guess. And then after COVID, when we moved here, I was like, oh, wow, there's a place that kind of, has this vibrancy and you can go out and see a drag queen in the week and have a gin and you can meet other queer people and have these conversations. And so much great was born from all of that, like my podcast and like connecting with people and things. But all of that stuff became very, very addictive for me, I think. And now I think I've got a better relationship with it. I'm not going out in the week now. I'm not drinking now. Again, this year I have drunk a bit. And then I've got to a point after Easter where I was like, I think it just doesn't work for me anymore. And I think, again, I have to make that decision. It's like I can go out and have drinks but I will probably wake up the next day feeling rubbish and anxious and not very good. And I'll probably then feel quite hard on myself because I can't just have one or two. And it's not that I'm an alcoholic, I wouldn't label myself that. At one point, I actually thought, oh, maybe I do have a drink problem. And I didn't drink for 10 months because this is another time where I fell off a stool in a pub and they asked me to leave. And it was the most mortifying experience ever. I'm not joking. Me and my friends know the full story. We laugh about it. But I literally fell off a bar stool and then they said, "Can you leave?" And the funny thing about it is I tried to style out and I was like, "I'm fine. I don't know what you're talking about." Just like playing with my phone. I was so drunk and it was a Thursday night. I'd had a couple of glasses of wine, decided to go out and see a drag queen, had a few gins. And then I was like, "Oh, let's do a shot." Because again, it's that dopamine. I was looking for the next thing. And then I think I was so mortified that I was like, I can't drink. And maybe I'm an alcoholic. I shouldn't do this. And now I'm like, no, 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 I'm not an alcoholic. I think I've just got a personality that just wants more. I'm a binge drinker. Like, if I go out and have one or two, I'm going to want to have 20. Same with cigarettes. I didn't smoke for 17 years. And then I moved to Brighton and then I started vaping and I started smoking. And then there was one summer that I was smoking. Lived in Gran Canaria for a few months after me and my husband separated for a bit. And I was smoking like 20, 25 cigarettes a day, drinking 6 large gins a day. And this is the thing, right? This is so unhealthy, but I went there. I was by myself, and it was a very sad time, and I was just, like, I'd never traveled, and I was in this, like, place I didn't know anyone, had no friends, and I was just like, "Right, well, I'll just, do what I need to do to kinda get by." So I'd go to the beach in the day, I'd have a nap in the afternoon, I'd then get dressed and go out in the evening for a bit of food, and then, I'd then sit at, like, a local bar, and where the locals were, and I'd have some gin, and I went there for 82 days, and I drank and smoked cigarettes the same amount for 80 of those 82 days.
Wow.
I know what I put my body through during that time, but I just didn't at that point, I was just a bit like, "Everything's gone to shit. I don't care. I'm just gonna do whatever I can to."
Yeah.
So if someone's watching this who deals with, heavy drinkers or alcoholism or something, they might go, "You drunk for 80 days. Maybe you do have a problem." But then if I go, "Right, I'm not drinking now," I can just not do it. I don't have that kind of withdrawal or cold turkey. Oh my God, I need to have a drink because I've not had one. For me, I'm just all or nothing.
Hmm.
It's the same with cigarettes as well. It's like if I make the decision that I'm not smoking, I won't do it.
That's
If I
not.
buy a packet, I want to smoke the packet.
Yeah.
So that's just how my personality works. So I think those are kind of it's a long-winded answer to your question,
Mm.
but those are the kind of key moments I think for me that just made me realize that actually some things just don't work for me anymore.
Hmm.
And it goes back to the whole thing around like a choice. It's like, okay, I can still do them if I want to, but what choice am I going to make? Is the thing I have to ask myself now.
Hmm. The way I describe it to people around me when I talk about similar things is I feel like nowadays I'm more conscious with my decisions,
Okay.
whereas before, when you're kind of in the hustle and bustle of it all
Hmm.
and you don't really care, you I never felt like I was consciously making my decisions.
Hmm.
I was just reacting to how, I guess, uncomfortable I was in like just living and being myself. So when you kind of talk about nowadays you make that choice, it feels like a similar thing of you're making a conscious choice not to do something or to do something.
I think I got to like Easter this year, and again, I hadn't gone out drinking loads over say the last year and a half. But when I did go out, I had big nights out, and when I went on holiday, I had big nights out. So the pattern for me really was, um, if I don't do it, I don't miss it. But when I do it, I'm like, let's have another drink, let's have a shot, let's. So I think I just got to like Easter, and I was just like, this is kind of creeping into that territory again of me waking up not feeling very well and just feeling a bit anxious and my skin wasn't very good. I just felt a bit kind of like I think also it's an age thing as well. It like you do kind of get to a point where you're like, am I how long can I do this for? Right. Um, because I am only 42, believe it or not. I have a very good collagen skincare
Would never
regime.
have guessed that. Never.
But it does. You definitely if I look at pictures, say from 5, 6 years ago before I moved to Brighton, I definitely have aged over the last few years, and that's natural. But I do also think, I wonder how much of that has been kind of like lifestyle and, just kind of being a bit excessive. So I just kind of said, I think I'm just gonna not drink because it's just not doing it for me. So I did a holiday a few weeks ago in Gran Canaria. I was sober for the whole time. Everyone else was drinking around me. I was doing non-alcoholic beers. Great, because I had no hangovers in the morning. I was waking up first around the pool, and then my bar bill every night was like €9. Everyone else was like spending like 70, €80 a night on cocktails and drinks, and so I was quids in, which was great. Um, and then cigarettes. A few weeks ago, when I tried ADHD medication and I thought about kind of whether that'd be something for me, I just decided that I wasn't going to smoke because it's a stimulant, the medication, and obviously if you're smoking, you're drinking caffeine and stuff like that with it, it can make you quite poorly. So I was like, right, well, I can't smoke then. So the good thing, or the really interesting thing about it though, is if I have, say, a packet of cigarettes in my house, they will go. I can't keep them or I throw them away and then almost like punish myself. This is the thing that I do with my mind. So I'm like, no, it's bad. I wish I had never have done it again. I'm going to chuck them in the bin and, pretend they didn't exist. And then the next day I'll be like, God, I really fancy a cigarette now. Why did I chuck them away? So what I've done is I've put half a box of cigarettes in my drawer and they've been there for 3 weeks. And that is unheard of for me. And I'm just like, they're there. I can smoke them if I want to, but I'm deciding not to. And I'm not even on tablets now for the ADHD. So I could. Last night, in the beer, in the fridge, I've got a non-alcoholic Peroni, and I've got this box of cigarettes, and I thought it'd be really lovely to sit in the garden tonight and do that. And I literally said to myself out loud, "You could do that if you want to, Andrew, but you'll probably want another one. So why don't you
Mhm.
just go watch the telly?" And I'm like, "I'm
Mhm.
just going to do that." So it's just shifting that mindset of rather than punishing and going, "You can't do this," and now I've got the option. So the option is now, well, I could do it if I want to, and if I
Mm.
do it, then I'll do it. But if I do it, I can't then beat myself up about it. I've got to just accept that I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas if I say you can't do that, I'm just going to want to do it 10 times more than I would have done.
Yeah.
So those are kind of the shifting things I think for me lately.
I'm trying to build this podcast and this series, I guess,
Mm,
around moments in people's lives that kind of not define them, but like shape their next trajectory
yeah.
and where they go next. Uh, I've read your book and
Have you finished it?
yeah, I
Have
finished it.
you?
It was really
Oh,
good.
did you like it?
Really
Oh,
good.
thank you.
Yeah.
That's kind.
You interview quite a lot of different people in that book.
Hmm.
And it was quite fascinating to read loads of different types of loss in
Hmm.
people's lives.
Yeah.
For anyone listening, it's called Do You Believe?
In life after loss.
Yeah,
Thank you,
brilliant.
Cher. Yeah.
So it's all about different types of loss in people's lives, whether it
Yeah.
be a parent, loss of identity, loss of self,
Yeah.
loss of anything in life,
Hmm.
relationships,
Hmm.
etc. What was something you took away from that whole experience?
I think that we're also strong and so capable. Like we give ourselves very little credit for being able to get through the most difficult times. And I think, like, for me, all of those people that were part of the book, like, it was a privilege to interview them and hear their stories. And I was blown away by them. Like, I'd come off like video calls where I, did the interviews and things. I'd be transcribing them and just kind of thinking, I can't believe A, they've trusted me with these stories, but also what people go through. Like, we don't even realize it's a loss sometimes or that it affects people in that kind of way. Um, but I think for me, it was just very much like, yeah, we're strong and we're able to get through so much. And the book is focuses on the queer community. So I've interviewed people from the queer community within the book, and then talked about my own situation as well. Um, so I think for me, there's that added layer of resilience as well, because I think as human beings, we're all a lot stronger. We don't feel it sometimes, but we are. But I think when you're in a marginalized community, and some people in the book are in several marginalized communities as well, you know, that's an added layer of complexity for whatever you're dealing with. So, to go through difficult things in life generally, but then have to deal with things like loss on top of that, it really does test you. Um, and I think, from like my own personal perspective, it was a real like reflective opportunity as well. Like I could have written so much more and I did as well. Like you have to, when you write a book like this, you've got to balance it between, a memoir or kind of a book where you're a nonfiction book where you're writing about something, you're bringing your own story into it, but it's also about other people. And, I'm not well known to write a memoir, and actually people wouldn't be interested in that. So it touches upon my own story. But what I did when I went through loss in 2023 is just keep writing. So like when my dad passed in the January, before I even knew the book was going to happen, I just went to Gales in Hove every day, got a coffee, and just like wrote a diary on my laptop because I was off work. I took time out, and it was just a really good way for me of processing what I was kind of going through and all the emotions. Um, so that was a really like reflective time. And then I think when I wrote the book, and then I, was wrapping it up and reflecting on everyone, and then writing the reflections from my own perspective as well. Again, it's just even myself. I was like, wow, like that was a year. That was a tough time. There's a bravery and a kind of for me, like when you walk towards the pain of these difficult times, like great stuff can kind of happen. Like, being able to work with all those amazing people and hopefully help people in the process if they read it as well. You don't know if that's going to happen, but you know, it was, yeah, I guess it was just very cathartic all round. And just, yeah, people are strong. And I think sometimes we forget that. We forget what we're capable of, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you mentioned about your own loss in there. I think one of the first conversations we actually had in here
We did.
was about that.
Death, yeah.
Yeah, great.
I tend to meet a lot of people and talk about death. I'm not going to lie. It follows me around.
But like I think from that first conversation, I feel like we could relate on quite a lot of
Yeah,
different stuff about life at that point
yeah.
already. What was that kind of whole process like when you found out? Because it throws you out, right? It throws you
Mm.
into a different sense of reality, like your security. I don't know. Part of your growing up and your childhood just goes.
Yeah, it's very bizarre, isn't it? I think, I wasn't really close to my dad. Like we had a mutual understanding and we loved each other and I knew that. And I knew that, if I ever needed him, if I went to him and said, "Dad, I'm in trouble, I need some help with something," you know, not that I ever did, but if I did, he would say, "Okay, ask your mother." No, no, yeah, no, no, he kind of did tend to default, no. But he would have helped, and he would have kind of, been there as best as he could have been. Um, and when I was growing up, my dad was really, really sad because he'd lost his son. My brother died when he was like 22, and I was only 6 at the time. But that was probably the first time I remember something big happening and like death being a thing, right? And no one talked about it because it was just too painful. It was too painful for my dad. He was at a really, he'd lost a child, so it was a really, or a son, but he was, an adult. So it was a very tough thing for him to kind of deal with. And that was the first time that I became, really aware of like death and that kind of happening. And yeah, dad couldn't really talk about it. And I think he was just very, I don't know, he was very kind of closed, really. He was quite sad when we were growing up and just very, I guess inward because he was dealing with a lot of grief himself, but didn't know how to really process it. This is my view on it. If he was here, he might say something different. But I think that's what it was. I think he just had a really tough time kind of dealing with it. So he was quite closed and quite quiet and, wanted an easy life really because he had enough going on in his mind that he was kind of dealing with. That's how I kind of see it. And as he got older and he became a grandparent and he retired, and there was a real softer side that kind of came out of my dad. So, you know, when we did get to see each other and we kind of hung out and we'd go out for dinner or do nice things or whatever, it was actually a real pleasure. Whereas when I was growing up, I didn't really know how I felt about him because he was just my dad that just wasn't very happy, if that makes sense. Or, the one thing I would say about both my parents is that, they were grafters, right? They worked hard. We had really lovely family holidays. We always had great food on the table. We had, clothes and, we never wanted for anything. We were very lucky in that respect. And my dad worked really hard all of his life. Um, but when he retired, that's probably when he became more of himself and more happy because he just naturally, I guess, got older and had grandchildren and started to see life in a bit of a different way. Um, so when it actually came to losing him, like I would say we were closer and we had a nice relationship. But it still was what it was. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Yeah, yeah.
The actual time itself, I think, there was a whole other load of stuff going on as well, like family drama and things. And it was just a really, really difficult time. So I wasn't actually there when my dad passed away, because I'd already come back to Brighton. And I remember just kind of getting the message from my sister. My sister called me and said, dad wants to, basically, it's not going his way. He'd been on oxygen for like the week, and they just said it's not going his way, um, and you know they're going to turn off the oxygen machine and kind of see what happens, I guess. But I think they knew that what was going to happen. Um, and then she said, do you want to have a chat with him? And I said, no, 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 it's cool. Just I'm good. Let him rest, kind of thing. And then so she texts me about an hour later saying, Dad's gone. It was that quick.
Wow.
So I was a bit like, when it happened, I was a bit like, oh,
Mm.
like, that's actually happened. And it's one of those things, isn't it, where, like, I don't think you can ever quite prepare for that kind of news, even if you're not close to someone, you know, or you are close to whatever, it's still like a really weird thing. And it kind of feels like you've lost an arm or something. There's
Yeah.
part of your body or part of how you're made up has kind of disappeared. Very like strange. And I remember like, going for a walk on Hove Seafront afterwards and just feeling really alert. That's how I can describe it. The birds were chirping, the sun was out. It was January the 20th. It was cold but sunny. Everything was just so extreme and so like all my senses were just kind of awake. I could really like feel everything. And it was just like this moment of like, wow, something has really changed and kind of like shifted. Um, and I'd experienced loss before in my life. Like I lost a friend in my 20s and that kind of thing. That was hard. But I don't know, something about losing a parent, which was just a bit like, oh wow, there's a part of you that's kind of cut off a little bit. And then I guess you then just have to go through like processing it, don't you?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, that was a really long answer.
No, but it rings true though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because like, nothing does prepare you for it.
No.
And especially, like, I don't know, growing up as a kid, it's like you you're just going about your merry way. You're just living your life. You don't really understand life at all. You're just growing up. And then when it gets to a point where someone does pass away, it's like, "Oh, now what?" Now my sense of reality has completely been morphed and changed.
Yeah.
And you said you lost your brother.
Yeah, so when I was 6, my dad was married before, before he met my mum. So I've got an older sibling or 2 older siblings from his first marriage, and yeah, one of them died when he was 22.
Wow.
So that was like, my goodness, it was 1990. So
Mm,
that's many years ago now. But that is one of my earliest memories of kind of my dad getting the phone call and sitting
mm,
on the stairs listening to what was being said to him. And then, yeah, us all being, we had to run out of the house and go to our neighbors, and they had
mm.
to go to the hospital and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it was just, he just, and I think, because when you're a kid, you know, what isn't spoken about, you almost become a bit afraid of, I think.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it was like one of those things where we just didn't speak about it because it was just too painful for my dad, um, which is completely understandable. But I think I started to become a little bit, and I have OCD. So, my mind is, I have had it since I was a kid, and I now know that looking back, but it took me until I was 37 to get formally diagnosed. I just kind of coped with it. And people say OCD, oh, you like to have things tidy or whatever. If only people knew what OCD was like. It's like, ruminating mind, intrusive thoughts, kind of worrying about stuff, catastrophizing. I can't tell you how many times it's been very debilitating. And I don't think any of that was the catalyst for it, because that's obviously how my mind is wired. But I did become quietly a little bit afraid of certain things, and death was one of them. And like, but again, I never told anyone about it. It's just, you kind of just keep it in because it's like, you don't understand it and you're a kid, right?
Mhm.
Um, so, but we'd like go to we'd go to the cemetery with my nana, because my granddad had died when I was about 2 or something, and he died when he was 70. So I would look at the gravestone and I would say 70, and then I would work out my dad's age, and then I'd calculate, I'd go, right, so when I'm 30, dad will be 70. So dad will die when he's 70.
Yeah.
That was in my brain. So when he didn't, and he was, my dad was 79, but when he didn't, it was like, oh, okay, that isn't how it works. And obviously, when you're an adult, you kind of see it differently. You're like, well, of course, that's not how it
Yeah.
works. But when you're a kid, it's like, well, okay, so I'm going to be 30 when I lose my dad, and that's, the kind of
Mm.
thoughts that and then I'd be, would worry my nana would die all the time, and I'd be kind of, yeah, it was just, death was kind of always kind of there, really. And then my best friend died when she was 23, and I was 23 as well, and that was just like the most heartbreaking situation. And that's, that's a really private one, so it's not one to talk about. But from my own experience, like, even though that was like my first big loss, and I had absolutely no idea how to deal with it, and so I was just kind of in this deep grief and depression, um and had absolutely no clue of how to deal with it, because it's like, when someone's 23, they shouldn't die, right? And you, as a 23-year-old as well, it's like, how do you have the skills and life experience to even process that? Um, so, but when I look back now, all of those moments have been kind of, you know, I guess, moments in life that have then prepared me for losing my nana when she
Yeah.
died, losing my dad when he died, because you by going through grief and by losing, you do become really,
More aware of it
you
all, I guess.
do.
Yeah.
And also, like, in the job I do by day, like, I work in HR and I deal with people all the time. Like, for me, I never want people to feel like they can't have an honest conversation, or a conversation that's really real about something, because a lot of people are afraid to talk about death. They're afraid to talk about loss. And as we know, day one we met, we started talking about it. I was like, here's my book. I would much rather have a conversation about it and ask someone how they're doing and talk about their grief rather than be that awkward person that says the wrong thing or doesn't know what to say and then makes the other person feel bad about themselves in some way. Like when I lost my friend, I remember people were really sympathetic to a point at work and stuff. And then afterwards, they'd be a bit like, okay, that's happened now. Can we just move on? I do mention that in the book. And when you're going through like grief, which is so debilitating, you feel so sad, all you want to do is think about it and talk about it because you want to keep that person alive. That's your connection to them. And so when people are bored of your grief, it's just, you then feel like a pain or an inconvenience. But inside you're just crushed because you're just like, I'm never going to see this person that I love again. And it's the worst feeling. So when people have lost people around me that I know, I want to talk to them about it and ask them how they're feeling and give them that extra hug if they need it, or just talk about it and get them to really open up because people that are going through grief, I think, really do want to talk. Even if, it takes them a while, when they eventually do talk, from my own experience and from talking to other people, I think it really does help because you need to process it. And yeah, it is a way of kind of keeping that person in your mind and your heart, I think, which is
Yeah.
really important.
The day I stopped talking about my dad
Mm,
is the day his legacy then doesn't continue in some sort of aspect.
mhm,
And I've processed the fact that he has gone and he's not here physically.
mhm,
But that doesn't mean that his what he left behind
mm,
can't be carried on in some aspect. And I think that's so vital.
mm,
Like there are so many aspects of me and my dad's relationship that I look back on now and I'm like, I wish I could have changed that, or I wish something was different, or I wish we were able to communicate on a different level. But then I look back at other aspects of how he raised me as a father and what he did for me and how much he went above and beyond to to make sure I'm okay.
mm.
And then I look back at that and I think, okay, I want to pass that on
Yeah.
to future families or to my own children and
Mhm.
the next kind of generation. But I think the day you stop talking about it, that's when it really that's when they really die.
Well,
What do you think?
I've got an alternative view to that, if
Okay,
that's all
I like
right.
no, I because this is actually really good because I was talking about someone with this over Instagram the other day,
Mm,
and she kind of she thought I hadn't processed it
okay.
by saying that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm intrigued.
No, it doesn't sound like you've not processed it. I think for me, this is my view, and again, I don't want to invalidate your view. I kind of feel like, that's really, really sweet, but also it's a lot of pressure for you or for the person that's dealing with their loss. Life does, it's such a cliche, but you do move on eventually and life gets busy and you have new relationships and you have different things going on in life. And I think that you don't always, the grief is there, but it's not as painful as it was, when it first happened with any type of loss. And it doesn't matter about the relationship that you have, whether it's a really strong relationship or a distant relationship, whatever. When you lose someone, you've loved them and you've had a connection, it's still difficult to lose someone, I think. But I think, yeah, it is a lot of pressure to kind of to put that on anyone when the reality is, as time goes on, we probably will think less about the people that we've lost. However, they will come up in moments that you least expect it. For example, 2 weeks ago, I was making a sandwich with cheddar cheese. And I just went, "Oh, my dad really loved a cheese sandwich," because he did. And it really made me laugh when I said it. And it's like there's little things like that that I will just think about and I'll go, "Oh, dad, that's nice." And then I'll carry on with my day. Same with my friend. My friend's been passed now for, goodness, I think it's 19 years this year. And that's gone so, so quickly. But also it hasn't. It's like I'm a completely different person to who I was when I was 23. My life experience and what I've been through, and being now 42 nearly, I'm not that person anymore. So, to feel to feel like how you feel then now is probably not possible, not realistic. But also life then moves on and changes. And but again, you have those moments where you reflect on something, you kind of go, oh, like a song, for example. I have albums that I've listened to all around that time when it happened. If I hear those songs, it takes me right back to 2007. Um, it just will. So it's like it there's moments you can have where you do think on it, but if it's not every day, that's kind of okay. And I think it gives you permission as well to move on and live your life. And, like when you become a parent and you have children and stuff, yeah, those values you just talked about, to take those forward is lovely. But actually, your next chapter is really, really important, right? And, you know, whether that's not absent of grief, but like you deserve to move forward with your life in a way where you're not continually grieving, I think. But it doesn't mean that the people that we love ever go, I don't think, because, we have memories and things that we hold on to.
I feel guilty if the fact I don't think about him. Maybe not every day,
Mm,
because I think that is unrealistic. But because I can never speak to him again,
yeah.
I think that's the toughest thing.
Mhm.
That like I then feel, I guess I do feel a sense of responsibility to keep that legacy going.
Mm.
I don't know.
How old are you, Dan?
26.
26. So and again, I don't mean this in a patronizing
Mm.
way. You were really, really young to have lost your dad, I think. And again, I probably, if I think back to being 23 and losing a friend and the way I process grief then versus now when I'm 40. Okay. Also, what I would say is if someone died that I really loved tomorrow or today, doesn't mean I'm like, would never grieve. I've got grief sorted. Absolutely not. I'm still really scared of death. I'm I'm more accepting of it as I get older. Definitely. I know it's gonna happen. This is really weird as well. I'll say this. One of the moments a few years ago, I was going through some stuff and when you process and you ruminate over things and you kind of worry about stuff for the future and stuff. And I remember having a conversation with a friend and with Theo, and we're in my lounge talking, and I said to them, "Do you know, I've had this realization that one day I'm gonna die, and that is the most freeing feeling ever, because how much time do I have to make it count?" And that sounds really like, and don't get me wrong, I don't want to die
Mm.
tomorrow. Am I scared of, something happening to me or to someone that I really love? Of course. Like, I'm not free of the fear of death or grief or anything. But, when you love, you lose. You can't, nothing goes on forever. So as you get older, I think you maybe do see things a bit more, a bit differently. And I certainly have as I'm in my 40s compared to when I was in my 20s. Um, so I don't want something awful to happen, but also there is a part of you that kind of has to go, but life will happen and we can't prepare for it and we don't know when it's going to happen. So what do we do right now? We have to just really enjoy what we have. Um, so going back to, you being 26, I think it's really, really young to go through such a loss. And, to lose a parent in your 20s, lose a parent at any age is tough, right? And it's your first loss, I'm guessing?
First one that really stung.
Yeah.
Not that others don't, but
Mhm.
like it genuinely felt like half of me had just been teared up
Yeah, yeah,
in that moment.
yeah.
And all my grandparents, for example, have died.
Mhm,
And someone who I went to school with wasn't overly close with him, but I did actually do a podcast with him.
mhm,
Uh, he died.
mhm,
And I guess it wasn't the first loss, but it was the first really impactful
mm,
one of like, okay, this person actually means a hell of a lot to me
yeah,
and was a very integral part of my life.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. Yeah, definitely. And again, as I said, not to sound patronizing, but I think it's really young to lose
Mm.
a parent, and because 'cause you're just into your first stage of adulthood, right? You're kind of getting to know who you are. Like your 20s, me and, my husband and friends say this. 20s are like your self-discovery years. It's like, who am I? How do I see the world? Where am I gonna fit? Oh my God, do I still worry about X, Y, and Z? I feel insecure about this. Do I look okay? Da, 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 da. 30s, you get a bit more comfortable, and then it does. And I will say this, it gets easier with every decade. So you got some great stuff to come. Um, but yeah, so I think to go through something like that when you're in that journey of like discovering who you are as a person is really, really tough.
Mm,
But you will be forever shaped by it. I
massively.
think.
Yeah.
I definitely have been shaped throughout my life by all the different things that have happened, whether it's been death, relationships, friendships. You look back and you're like, okay, all of those things that have happened, whether they've been good or bad, have shaped exactly where I am today. Um, Moments, as you call
Moments.
them,
Yeah,
moments.
absolutely. That's what this whole podcast is about. The moments. I think that's because everyone has their own journey and their own story, right? And everyone has their own, I guess, moments of life that
Mm,
like really make them who they are.
mm,
And as you get older. Um, so yeah, I mean, I'm so intrigued as I go along this kind of journey of interviewing everyone to find out everyone's moments and
yeah,
where how they got to their next steps in a way. And
yeah.
yeah, it's gonna be a good old journey, this
Yeah,
podcast, so really
definitely. It's really, I think as I said to you before when we talked, I think the conversation is one that we just don't have enough of.
yeah.
And I think a lot of people are scared about death and loss and, you know,
It is actually my biggest fear, death.
yeah,
I think, like, when you said it's a fear of yours, if anyone asks me what my biggest fear is, it's death.
mm,
And I'm trying my best actually, most recently, to be more accepting of the fact because 'cause I've experienced it, like, a friend, family members, like, I've
mm,
experienced it, I've seen it,
mm,
but that, in a way, actually makes me more scared of it
yeah,
because then I guess I do value the time here a lot more.
mm,
That has been something incredible
yeah,
that, in a way, I can take from those experiences. It makes me appreciate everything tenfold,
mm,
but, like, it also then makes me super aware of it, and because I'm super aware of it, my brain fixates on it, and then I become, "Okay, that could happen at some point." Or, well, it will happen at some point, but
yeah.
any point.
I'm not an expert on death,
Mm.
loss, grief, or I'm not a therapist, but I would definitely say what you're saying I can relate to. Like, when I had a real bout of grief in my 20s, it definitely felt like it was all I could think about, all I could talk about. I literally would wake up in the morning and it was all I could think about. It didn't a good few years, it was kind of there. With the knowledge I have now and kind of life experience, if that happened again now, I probably would grieve differently because, I have different experiences. But that situation, all the other ones that I've kind of been through have all in some way changed me or given me more knowledge about, you know, what's important and, you know, um, what to focus on. But no one escapes it, but also no one escapes the fear of it either. Because we all like to think we're going to live forever and that
Yeah.
nothing's going to go wrong. And we, especially when I think when I was younger, I'd be living going, oh my goodness, like, I'm in my 20s and you don't think about getting to like, I don't know, 60, 70 or whatever, and worrying about getting like I don't know, an ailment or something and like having a leg issue or, getting older and having some sort of like defect or something in your body where you're like having to have like medication for or something. Your grandparents have that, but when you're 20 something, you don't think about
It's
that.
never
But
gonna
then you
happen.
get to like my age now for like 40. And again, it's like, I feel young, I feel healthy and that kind of stuff. But you start to kind of see things a bit differently because, parents have been ill or, um, people have around you have passed away. And also I think going back to what you said earlier about part of you was missing, it's the structure of things, isn't it? Like you have your parents and then you're like the
Mm,
kid of the parents, right? So then when your parents kind of go or, you lose someone who has that kind of presence in your life, you're then kind of like you're further up the hierarchy of people.
mm,
So you're like, if there's no grandparents, no parents, it's just me. It's like, so who am I? And I've now got to figure this out myself, and it's a lot of responsibility. But look
100%.
what you're doing. Oh, sorry, look what you're doing around here. Like,
Yeah.
you've opened up a studio, you're doing your qualifications, you're making stuff happen for yourself. Like,
Mhm,
that's so much to be proud of. You're doing that,
mm.
that's we're again goes back to that whole thing of despite going through all the difficult stuff, we're so much more capable for still moving on with life and doing great stuff. And so you should give yourself a big pat on the
I
back, you know.
appreciate that.
Yeah,
That's really
yeah,
kind.
you're doing some
Thank
really
you.
great
Do you know what
stuff.
it was? I kept saying to myself, I'm lost in this
Mm,
world. I'm searching for myself.
mhm,
Constantly felt like I was searching for the next thing, the next person, the next project.
mhm,
I used to do a lot of boxing fights, so I was searching for the next boxing fight. I was searching constantly.
mhm,
But then once it was reframed to me is if you're searching for yourself, who's the one searching?
mhm.
It's me.
Hang
So
on.
I am
So that
here.
again, if you're searching for yourself,
Who's the one searching?
yeah,
Well, it's me.
yeah.
So I'm already here. And finding yourself isn't about searching for yourself, it's
Mhm,
about becoming a better version of yourself
mhm,
and getting rid of things that don't serve you.
mhm,
And once I kind of looked at it like that, I stopped externally searching for things. I stopped reaching for gambling was my vice,
mhm,
alcohol was my vice. I
mm,
stopped going outwards
mhm,
and I said, I'm already here.
mhm.
So who do I want to become rather than who am I searching for? So I
Yeah.
was kind of looking at myself in a character mode rather than actually me.
Like outside
Yeah,
looking in kind of thing.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, like that.
The person I want to become is someone who carries themselves with more value,
Mhm.
someone who owns their own business, who can work for themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I basically just wrote down all the things I want to become
Mhm.
and who I want to see myself become. And I think that was my moment.
Yeah.
But
That's very
yeah, I
nice.
managed to get that quote out in the end, so that's
That
very
that's your
good.
moment. I love that. There's a thing I heard about recently called success amnesia. Don't know if I mentioned this to you when we spoke
Mm,
before, but basically it's like it's quite common with ADHD, and it's like you do something, so do a really great thing, and for example, I wrote my book, and then you're like, right, that's done. What's the next thing? So you never celebrate the kind of successes because you just forget about them and move on to the next thing. And it's like there comes a moment where you have to kind of say, when am I going to stop and actually give myself a pat on the back for doing the stuff I've done? So rather than always looking for something extra, what's the next thing, the next thing, the next thing that's going to give me some sort of validation? Actually, when am I going to stop and kind of really applaud what I've done? Despite loads of chaos in the last few years in my life, and actually the last couple of years, things have balanced out and it's getting good. Did a podcast which had 6 seasons. I wrote a book. I've just written a novel which I'm editing at the moment. I've showed up for work and done a full-time job. Me and my husband are doing well, traveled, have had some great friendships and some great moments in my life. And it's like I've done all of that, and but yet the mind still kind of goes, right, what's next then? I mean, I hadn't even finished editing my book that I've just written, and I was like, right, what's the next idea? And it's like, at what point do you stop and just go, how about chill and
mm.
enjoy yourself? And rather than thinking about the thing you're going to be doing when you get back from your holiday, really go and enjoy the holiday. Like, really enjoy that gelato in Italy, or really enjoy that boat ride, or enjoy a day at the beach listening to music without worrying about what you've got to do on the to do list.
Mm,
We're so quick, I think, sometimes just to kind of keep going. And I think sometimes it's because and again, I definitely felt this as I got older. And again, I'm talking like really like it's the end of my life. I really hope it isn't. But like, you know, I got to creativity in my life really late. So I never really had the confidence or the kind of, I just thought, what's the point? No one's going to enjoy it. And then just when I moved here, I was like, no, I do want to create. I want to be a creative. And actually, how can I do that? So that's when the podcast was born. And, then I started writing and the rest is kind of history. But because I am older, there's part of me that kind of goes, I'm that much more behind other people, if that makes sense. Like you're 26, you have your own podcast studio. That's amazing. Like imagine what you're doing at 42. Like there's so many opportunities for you ahead because you've already got that motivation of I'm going to make this happen and make this succeed. And I think that's awesome. So when I started doing it at like 37, I'm like, okay, I'm 17 years past 20 now. Actually, is it too late? You start to think about all of that kind of stuff, because I've got a mortgage, I've got bills to pay, I've got to do my full time job. I can't just quit my job and go and be a creative. I've got to pay my bills. And so that's kind of now my side hustle. It's like, right, I'll write and I'll create. And if I, end up making money from it or do some great stuff from it, that's amazing. But I've also come to the point as well where I'm like, I just want to keep doing it for me as well. I've definitely done it for external validation and success and tried to like make it a thing. I'd be lying if I said that I hadn't done
mhm.
that because I love podcasting. I really hope that my novel gets picked up, like my new book that I've written, I'm so proud of it. But again, it's like rather than thinking about the next one, I need to let myself be proud of it, and really enjoy it because yeah, I might nothing else might happen. I might fall off the end of the earth tomorrow or whatever, who knows? Um, but I don't wanna have kind of not appreciated any of those moments.
Yeah.
Moments. There you go, back
Moments.
again. If not, what's the point? You're just on a continual cycle of doing, and it's really exhausting,
It
you
is.
burn out and you can't do that.
No.
Um, so yeah, that's definitely my thing, learning to celebrate the moments and all the keep saying moments now, but celebrate them, rather than just kind of like looking for the next thing.
Yeah.
That's the other thing about grief. Find the joy, find the, oh my God, laugh. Like, just, you need laughter, you need love, you need to find joy in the most darkest moments. If you have the most inappropriate, funny moment at the most inappropriate time, let yourself belly laugh. And then if you cry afterwards, let yourself cry. I think when we go through, well, I definitely felt this when I was younger, when we have a certain version of what grief should look like, or what, how we talk, even how we talk about people when they've gone. It's like, when I always struggle with this, but when sometimes people say, "Oh my God, this person was just amazing. They were just the kindest person they are." When they walked into a room, they had the room lit up and all this kind of stuff. And you're like, no, they were miserable and they were so unkind. And, just because they've died, we don't now need to make them like this kind of like amazing, like
Mm,
angelic person.
mm.
Sometimes people are assholes, right? And
Yeah.
you wouldn't wish death upon them,
No.
but people sometimes aren't nice.
Yep.
Um, so don't feel that you have to always say the right thing about someone when they've passed, and don't feel that you have to be in a continual state of grief and never find joy or love or the fun in life. Because if you just focus on that, and sometimes you can't help it because that is all consuming, but when you have the moments and you can get out of it, you have to take them, because if not, it can be a really, really dark, depressing place to be, I think. And we all only get one shot, so we just got to find the joy, I think, when we can.
That's actually hit me like a ton of bricks.
Ah, it's just, and that's the thing that I've learned through grief. And again, that's why I don't feel bad about not thinking about people that I've lost every day, or they're not always in my thoughts. I love them, and you never lose. I think you're always connected to the people that you've loved. Like this year, it was my dad's 3-year anniversary, and I had a really, really good cry at the beach. I just needed to. I just felt really emotional. I put Tina Turner on because it was the song, the artist that we both loved, and I literally walked down towards the beach, and as I saw the sea, I couldn't help it. I just burst into tears, and it hadn't hit me like that since he died, and I needed to cry that day, and then I felt absolutely fine. And it's like, I don't know when it's going to show up, but until it does, I'm gonna have some fun.
Mm. What you were talking about laughing, like I've never known when the right time to laugh again was. Does
Hmm.
that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like I felt so sad for so long. I was like, Am I in the right for laughing?"
Yeah, yeah,
Like I didn't know at that point. I didn't know, and I think I'm getting better at it,
yeah. Hmm.
but I still think I have a little bit of that in me.
Hmm.
So it's definitely a learning curve. Do you think you ever get over?
Losing someone.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or do you just become like better at living with it?
I spoke to someone last year, and I don't know if this is a quote that he gave me, or this was his take on it. And he talked about grief as, you don't you don't kind of it doesn't go, but you move around it. I'm probably
Mm,
really fudging that quote, but like, it's always there, but actually, you know, I think you're forever changed by loss, but actually, when you're grieving, rather than it being the thing that's like all consuming, eventually you build like your new layers around it. So, for example, when I was listening to music in January, and there's a particular song that I love, that I think about my dad too, my heart just felt heavy. Like, there'll be moments where it's, you feel it in your body. It's not, and like that, for the first year or so, actually, whenever I would talk about my dad, or I talked about kind of what had gone on during all that time, I could feel like grief just, it was like in my chest and kind of in my throat. I could really feel it. And I don't feel that now. But like that day, I needed to kind of process it. Same with my friend, you know, there will be moments where I'll just kind of now actually the really lovely thing about her is I'll have a moment or where I think about her and I'll just go, oh, I'll feel like a real like, oh, that was my friend, you
Yeah.
know. I'm not sad anymore because, you know, that's not where I'm at.
Mm.
And that isn't a thing to feel bad about. It's like actually the impact someone makes on your life by the very fact you love them and you're sad doesn't have to be a constant state of sadness, I don't think. I think it can turn into something really joyful as well, and like a memory or like music or laughter or whatever it might be. That's the thing to kind of hold on to. So I don't know if it ever goes, but I think it can change rather than being so distressing. It can turn into a beautiful thing as well.
Yeah.
It shows you love someone, doesn't it, as well?
That's true.
I
I
think.
think love's one of the best feelings in the world, actually,
Yeah.
isn't it? Like, and to have loved someone like that is always a blessing.
What a gift to have people in your life that you feel so strongly about, and you kind of sorry, I'm not getting emotional, my throat's a bit dry. But you feel so strongly about, and you're so bereft about, you know, that you've wow, you've really loved someone, and they've loved you. You've had an impact on each other's lives. To feel that way, that's such a privilege, isn't it? You know, life, love, loss. It's all a bit of a privilege.
Yeah, it is.
You know, I think it is. It's a yeah. I don't know. I think
Yeah.
it's a gift.
I agree.
And it can be really hard, but it can be really lovely.
Definitely.
Mm.
Okay, as we kind of wrap up
Yep.
here, for anyone watching or listening, where can
Yes.
they find
Where
you?
can they find me? Or they can buy my book if they want to.
Absolutely.
It's called Do You Believe in Life After Loss? Queer Stories of Loss, Hope and Resilience. It's available on Amazon and all good bookshops. Shop locally if you can. And I'm on Instagram, at Flewitt actually is my handle. Or you can also search at Queer I Am the podcast or at Perineum Sunning podcast, which is my new podcast with my friend Nick. And you can follow that on YouTube as well. And we recorded that here, which was just awesome. Like we had the best time here. It was so much fun. It feels really weird being in here actually without Nick and without the guests. It's like it feels very serious. We've been talking about all random things. So yeah, people can check it out if they want to.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Andrew, thank you so much
Thank
for
you. It's
this.
been wonderful. Thank you for having me.